Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Bible Biker Church. What we're going to do today is we're going to discuss what we have up and coming. And if you'll notice, we do have a child crying this morning, but that's fine. I can talk over it. That's my grandson, as a matter of fact. But that lets you know that we do have children here. And if you have children and you want to come to church, and you're worried that your child is just going to mess it all up because, you know, babies cry, children, sometimes they'll get bored with what adults consider something that's not boring, and I hope no adult will consider me boring, but regardless, if you do have children, this is a perfect thing for you to see, to understand that you as a parent and your children are welcome here, and we understand that sometimes children get upset. And we do not get upset about that, and we will not ask you to step outside because of that, because we do not turn people away from what they have came to receive from God. We will not. And that is what my message is about today. My message is about being turned away from coming to worship God. Especially in this day and time. We talked last week about the school shootings that went on, and I don't want to keep bringing that up for people that think that everybody's jumping on board right now to keep other people in turmoil over what has happened. I believe we all know that's going on, and we've all been praying that the people that had children that were involved in being hurt in that, and friends and everything that they lost, we pray for you, and we certainly hope that you don't feel like that we are continuing to keep that wound open. But what I want to talk about today in the wake of this is I know that there are a lot of people, because of what's going on in America today, are feeling the need to reconnect their spiritual connection with God. And one of the things that we're finding out when we go out to do our discipleship in other places, we are hearing more and more common from other people that they have tried to go to church here in Rockwood, Tennessee, in the area, that people have tried to go to church and have happened to show up at a church that has told them that they could not come in because they were not dressed appropriately. And they have said because of that, they're not in church and they don't want to go to church because they feel like they're being judged that way. However, one of the excuses I used for a long time about why I would not go to church, with church being full of hypocrites, is because I had been turned away from church. And the devil let me use that as a crutch. I'm telling you right now, it's time for us as adults to stand on our feet, go where God is telling us to go and worship Him. If you felt the need to go somewhere and you were told that you were not dressed appropriately or you were not the right person to attend that area, you'll be more than welcome here. And I'm not using that as an advertisement to come here. I'm telling you, as adults as we are, that could be a way of you being let know that you're not a proper fit at that particular area, but don't stop trying. Don't let the devil defeat you, because that's what that is. And anybody that feels like that because of the way they look, or because of the lifestyle that they live, or because of the choices that they've made in life, please understand that you are more than welcome to come here. Regardless of your background as far as a denomination goes, we have all types of denominations that come here. Inside this chapel, we just choose not to be a denomination. We choose to teach the Bible as it is written. And I saw a t-shirt yesterday that says, "A preacher preaching the Bible the way it is to people the way they are." And I really like that, because in those words, that is exactly what Brother Fred and I and other people in our congregation, our Bible study and all that, that's what we go by. We preach the Bible as it is to the people that come the way they are. One of the biggest things that we all need to understand too is when we worship God, when I worship God with my close personal relationship with God, I've already been taught to worship the way that I have been taught to worship and the way that I feel that it is right to worship God. I've learned. That is something that you do between you and God. When a group is together to worship God, we worship in the way that the Holy Spirit moves us to worship. We all have different backgrounds. I had a Church of God and Pentecostal background growing up, and I'm married to a First Baptist. And my partner is based on Southern Baptist principles. And God put us together because we're a perfect fit. We understand that there are different ways, and we have never had not one conflict in what we believe. So with that being said, be comfortable here. Today, our spirits have been lifted up. We had a work day yesterday at the church. We have a very small congregation, and we are building a chapel. And right now, it's a small area, but we're expanding the area to be bigger to fit more people because we know it's coming. But yesterday, on a work day that was designated as a work day, with all of the work that has to be done, and if you could see it, you would feel that it's overwhelming for a small group. Yesterday, with what we had, with the rain that we had yesterday, we had 18 willing bodies to show up and work as hard as they could work to help see this happen. There were some that do not even attend our Bible study or our church, but they're in our community and they want to see this happen. They're showing an interest. We had 18 adults and 4 children. And it was just a great day yesterday. That's all I can say about that is God has been blessing us to show us that if we do what God has called us to do, that we will have the support to do it. And there's nothing that you can be overwhelmed with when it's God's plan. What we're going to talk about and what I'll explain a little bit about, I'm going to use our chapel as an example, and then I'm going to use us each as an example, is a couple of weeks ago I talked about what Paul said in Corinthians. It was Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16 and 17. And Paul tells them, he says, "Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy. Which temple are ye?" And all of my life growing up, I have been told, when I was in high school, it was very, very customary for a teenage boy to pierce one ear. And as soon as my mama found out about it, for one thing, she said I was destroying the temple, and I'm not in any way saying my mother was wrong in what she was trying to teach me and everything, because I did learn from that. But we were taught during that time frame that anything that we did to our outward appearance was destroying the temple. And where we're at now with that is we need to look a little deeper into that, because the temple where God lives, where God resides, is not on our skin, it's not on our clothes, it's within our heart. And what we need to understand too on that destroying the temple, that means what you're doing to yourself spiritually. Now what you do to yourself physically, like I used to have a problem that when I would be overwhelmed with things, sometimes I would cut myself and feel like, that was releasing pain. Now that physically what I was doing was also affecting me spiritually. So what we're focusing on right now was, where was I at spiritually with God when I felt the need to harm myself? Now see, what we do to the skin and the body then, if that is because of where we are spiritually at, then yes, that's destroying the temple. But you need to look at too, we have soldiers, we have Marines, sailors, airmen. all of our troops that are going overseas and fighting in battle right now are coming back broken. They're missing body parts. Now, if you go out and something happens to you to where you're missing a body part, have you destroyed the temple of God? No, God is still dwelling within that. But what that could do to you is destroy you spiritually, because you're not able to do what you were able to do, and you don't feel 100% about what you can do in the future. But God has a place for everyone. But what I want to talk about with what we have going on today is what we are doing to destroy the temple. Now let me explain a little bit about our chapel here. When this building was built, it was built for the people in the community, and it was built for the people that have donated the building for us to use to do ceramics. Now the ceramics that were made in the building were taken different places to sell and things like that. But also it was used for people in the community to be able to come to this building and to give them something to do, to let them build their ceramics and to let them paint the ceramics. And it was open to children. And one of the things with my wife is she can remember coming here as a little child and doing ceramics, because she was born and raised here. So there are people that see this building as something that they came to as a child and was taught how to focus their energy on something positive, okay? In the meantime, as things happened to where the ceramics were not being able to be built anymore, the building started not being used. The building started being in a little bit of poor appearance and everything inside. And then what we had coming into the building, we had people coming into the building here and doing things that they weren't supposed to do, and tearing up the building and doing things in here that was causing the building to be something that you would come in and look at on the inside, and you would know the things that were going on in here, and you would know something bad had went on in here, and you would just think that, you know, if someone come in and vandalized, if somebody come in and just tore it up or anything like that, you would think, well, wow, this building's no good no more, because I can look in here and see that, you know, nobody would want to be in here, okay? So that was kind of destroying the house that we're using for God today. But now we're rebuilding it. So see, whatever is destroyed within you can be rebuilt, and we can talk about that. Okay, what I'm going to be reading today is Mark chapter 14, verse 53. We're going to talk about, we all in here, we know the story that it took 3 days to rebuild the temple for Jesus. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to read about that. Because that part of the message that we're going to hear today is, how do we rebuild? And we're going to talk about how we can be tore down, what we can do to rebuild, and things like that. Because that's what we need to understand on what we can do in our society today, and how other people would stand in our way of being to rebuild if they don't want to see it built. Okay? St. Mark chapter 14, verse 53. And they led Jesus away to the high priest, and with him were assembled all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes. And Peter followed him afar off, even into the palace of the high priest, and he sat with the servants and warmed himself at the fire. And the chief priests and all the council sought for witness against Jesus to put him to death, and they didn't find any reason. It said, and found none. They didn't find any reason to put Jesus to death. We have studied this and we know this. There was nothing that Jesus done that would have caused anyone to put him to death, but yet they were given a choice when it come time to make a decision. Do you want Jesus, who's done nothing wrong? Do you want him, or do you want this man here who was a murderer? I can set him free. You can do what you want to with Jesus. I'm giving you a choice. And what we did, or what happened then, was a person that had done things that was wrong was chose over someone who had done nothing wrong. And that's what we have going on in society with our decisions now. We make the easy choice because what we feel like in our heart, if our heart's not right, is it is so much easier to continue doing something that we know is wrong than try to do right. And I don't know why. I don't know why we have turned this way, other than the fact that we're born in sin, and we have to be taught, and we have to learn how to do things for God, because the other comes naturally. We have to learn ourselves how to teach others to worship God naturally, how it will come natural. Okay? For many bear false witness against him, but their witnesses agreed not together, and there arose certain and bear false witness against him, saying, We heard him say, I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and within 3 days I will build another made without hands. Okay? I want to focus on what the false witnesses that came against him, they said, we heard him say. Okay? A lot of times, how many times has this happened to us where someone says, I heard that you, and going to tell you something negative that you feel like yourself that you didn't do. I heard that you. Okay, with us, it could be very easy for someone to say, I heard that you were in the bar this week drinking alcohol. The fact of the matter is, you probably will see us in the bar if you're out in the bars. You probably will, because that's where we go to talk to people about here. But the fact is, we don't drink alcohol. We don't tell you that you're not allowed to drink alcohol. We don't tell you what you can and can't do. But when someone would come to me and say, I heard that you were out drinking in the bar. See, that's false. That's false witness. Because I don't do that. Now that right there automatically could destroy my temple and make me say, what's the point of doing this if people are going to stir up rumors about me when I'm doing it? That's destroying the temple. When someone sets out to tear you down, they are destroying the temple that God lives in. And it's up to you whether or not you're going to let it happen. But the easiest way to not let it happen is to walk with God in a close personal relationship with God. You build that close personal relationship with God to where you know that you in your heart are right with God, and nobody can tear that down. You understand that. You understand the only person in the world that I have to answer to for my spiritual being is God. So I heard, that whole we heard or I heard or anything like that is going to affect you one way or another. And when he said, but neither so did their witnesses agree together. They didn't agree on what was said, so they spread several different things around because they just knew. But now, if someone can't agree together on a rumor that's going on about you, that pretty much means that they're all joining in on tearing down your spiritual temple, but none of them can agree on exactly what you did for it to be torn down. All they can agree on is they're against you. Okay? And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, saying, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witnesses against thee? But he held his peace and answered nothing. Again the high priest asked him and said unto him, Art thou the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am, and ye shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming up in the clouds of heaven. See, Jesus didn't feel the need to beg for the people to believe him and everything else at this time, during this time. Jesus didn't feel the need to join in on all the talk against him or anything. Jesus simply said who he was and what he was there for. He didn't get into no, I didn't say this, what you're saying. It didn't happen that way. He didn't have to, and we don't have to. We don't have to get involved in that. All we have to do is continue to go out the way that God told us to go out and continue to let Christ show in us and regardless of what other people say, we continue to do that. Because we are here to serve God and to please God. And we already know that we will be hated by other people that do not see things that way. They're going to try to bring us down. As long as we understand we're here to please God. And if we're pleasing God, we'll be at peace. Okay? So, one of the things that I'd like to talk about, though, is like what I was explaining inside this building. I know that I went out in the past looking for houses to buy. And one of the houses that I went to look at, the realtor was so excited about it, and I was excited about it because it appeared to be the house that would have worked for me and the price range that would have worked for me. And from what I seen on the exterior of the house, I liked it. I thought it was nice. But then I went inside the house, and what had happened inside the house is because the house sat empty, people had broke into that house and stole every bit of the copper wiring and copper plumbing out of the walls of the house. It totally destroyed the inside of that house. So see, there will be times that what we see on the outside will be pleasing to the eye, and then when we start learning more about it, we'll understand that there needs to be some maintenance done in there. There needs to be some rebuilding done in there because somebody has come in. The best way to describe that is, if God is not living in your heart, if you are not allowing God to live in your heart, then who's living there? If you're not serving God, who are you serving? It's either one or the other. There's no in between. There's no happy place if you're not serving God. There's no happy place. What you have is a false sense of being happy brought on by whatever crutch the devil has put on you to make you happy. You can be happy Saturday night drinking alcohol, but you're going to be sad Sunday morning hungover. Everything that the devil puts on you to make you feel like you're happy has a consequence to it that makes you know that you're not happy. But everything that God puts on you to make you happy, there's no end to that happiness. There's no end to that peace. There's no fear there, because whatever happens to you, God is there. The worst thing that could happen to me right now when I die is I might feel a little physical pain. The pain is temporary. But what's after that temporary pain that I feel is eternity of happiness that God has prepared before me that I am working here to achieve. That's what we all as disciples are trying to do. So, back to the story of the house. The house sat empty. Bad things were allowed to come into that house to destroy it. Okay? If our temple that is designed for God to dwell in, if we don't have God in that temple, we better be very, very careful. Very, very careful on who we invite in to the temple that was designed for God to live in. If you rented a house out to people, you have to be very careful of the tenants that you have come into that house, because they very well may not respect that house, and they could tear that house apart. They could move into your house and decide not to pay, or not to pay the rent for that house, or help maintain that house, and then when the time comes for them to get out, they will purposely destroy that house because they're no longer allowed to be there. So if we focus on our house, ourself that the Holy Temple built, same way with the church. And that's one thing too that we need to understand. When we come together as a church body, do we not know that our church body is the temple of God? So what's going to happen when other people out there want to say, oh, them guys over at that church, I saw them drinking beer outside the church. We don't have that on this property. But sometimes you can ride by and see a bunch of motorcycles and see one guy drinking a Diet Coke. And we've seen that in a picture that we took. We had Diet Cokes and Sprites that we were drinking out of a can, and we got looking at it and said, you know, there's no way to tell that that right there is a soda, but it sure does look like a beer. And I believe Brother Fred has said that he may have seen this happen in the past too. I know that someone's seen this happen in the past. You could ride by here and see this church and see that someone's drinking out of a diet drink and say, I seen them out there drinking beer. Now that's something that did not happen, but somebody be real quick. And that right there would be our temple for God and our church body, and it being set out to be destroyed. But we as a church need to understand that that does not deter us from what we're doing, because we know that things designed that way are put on us by the devil. Okay? So we need to focus on that. Once that temple that has been built for God to live in our bodies, when we have allowed something to come in besides God to destroy that temple, we also need to understand, just like we're doing with our chapel here, it can always be rebuilt. When Jesus said, tear down this temple that was built with hands, and I will rebuild it in 3 days. It don't take 3 days to rebuild our temple inside of our heart for God. It don't take that long. All it takes is that one confession and the belief in the forgiveness that is designed, where Jesus died for our sins, in a brief moment of prayer saying, I believe that Jesus died for my sins, I confess my sins, and I receive him in my heart. It's that simple and that quick for that temple to be rebuilt. And what a lot of people think is once I receive salvation and stand up from that and walk away, everything is fine. Well, you're going to heaven. That's fine. But there's still work to be done inside. Crown molding, good light fixtures, fancy door handles, all these things that we build for that Holy Spirit. We need to understand when we leave here from salvation, from the altar, or anywhere that we receive God from, when we leave that area, we're going out to continue building that area. And we're going out to show people what God has done in our lives. When we rebuild our temple, we're not ever going to be done improving that temple until the day we die. That's why it's important to understand that when someone comes against us, they are set out to destroy our connection with God. They're set out to destroy our temple within us where God lives. And that's not what that is. Let's continue to rebuild it. There will be a storm. There will be hail. There will be high winds. There will be rough waves. Anything that could come crashing in on us to try to destroy us. But the thing we need to do is understand we stand firm. Any damage that's received from that, we can repair with God. Now, at the beginning, I made a comment about people being turned away from the church. And it's important to understand, too, that I said I heard. So it's important for everyone to understand that what I had heard about people being turned away, that is the reason that I didn't mention the name of the church. Because it's what I heard. It's not what I know. And even what I know, it is not up to me to destroy their temple. But by statement being made that if you have ever been turned away from the church, you're more than welcome to be here. That's why I did not use the church name. So don't take that as a contradiction. Take that as a, once someone knows for sure about something like that and brings it to their attention, there is always a chance for even a church that turns people away to rebuild their temple and make things right with God. That's why it's very important that as we are out as disciples, we bring stuff like that to our church to be made aware of that so that we can pray and help them rebuild their temple. And pray for them to understand that no one should ever be turned away from God. That's my message for today. And anybody that's out there that hears the message for today, anybody that's interested in what we have going on here, you just need to understand it. All it takes is someone to say, I want to be involved, and you'll be more than welcome here, regardless, age, race, affiliations, backgrounds, choices that you have made, motorcycles. You know, we're a biker ministry, but we don't turn anybody away. Come and enjoy the peace that we can have here. Come as you are. And come as you believe. And just have a relationship with God. At this time of our message, we like to take prayer requests, and we like for our prayer requests for everyone's privacy to be right here with us. So at this time, we'll go ahead and cut the camera off, and we hope that you've enjoyed the message today.